everybody, and welcome back to my channel. I hope you all are having a wonderful day. Today I wanted to talk to you guys about the difference between mineral and chemical sunscreens, because I know that I talk about sunscreens so often and I talk about how I love mineral sunscreens and I'm not super fond of chemical sunscreens, but I don't know if I've ever really told you guys why or what the difference truly is. And so that's what we're going to go over today. So today I'm primarily going to be talking about mineral versus chemical in the US standard of the sunscreen realm. However, I do have a few Korean chemical sunscreens because you guys know I also really love Korean sunscreens, and I don't have a problem with Korean chemical sunscreens whatsoever. It's more here in the US that I have a problem with them. But we have 16 approved sunscreen filters here in the US, and 2 of those are zinc oxide and titanium dioxide, which are the filters that you'll find in a lot of mineral sunscreens. And the other 14 are all chemical filters, meaning those are filters like avobenzone, oxybenzone, octocrylene, octinoxate, homosalate. There are a ton of them. We only have 2 chemical filters for UVA here in the US that have been approved, and I would say probably 99.8% of sunscreens here in the US use avobenzone as their UVA protective filter, where I've only known of one, and it's by La Roche-Posay, that uses Matrixyl, I think it's called, but that one is also a UVA filter, and that one is approved here in the US. However, it's owned by L'Oreal, and I've only ever seen it in one sunscreen by La Roche-Posay, so I don't know how common it is to find it here. If you go to Europe, then you might find that filter a little bit more readily, but here mainly we use avobenzone as our UVA chemical filter. So the difference in protection when it comes to mineral versus chemical is a mineral sunscreen uses mineral filters. They're crushed up rocks essentially, and what they do is you put them on and they act as a mirror on top of your skin and reflect the sunlight back. And so they will work pretty much immediately, and that is opposed to a chemical filter that you have to put on a little bit before you get sun exposure, because what those do is they actually absorb into your skin and then they absorb the UV rays and deflect them out as heat. And so they work in slightly different ways, and that is part of the reason that I personally prefer mineral sunscreens over chemical sunscreens. But honestly, what a dermatologist will tell you is use a sunscreen that you want to put on, that you're going to be willing to put on. So that is definitely something that I stand behind, and if you're only ever going to be willing to use a chemical sunscreen, by all means use a chemical sunscreen. Next, we have the argument of, are chemical sunscreens harmful? Do they do any harm? Because the FDA has been doing some different studies reevaluating chemical sunscreen, and they've pretty much deemed that the 2 mineral sunscreen filters that we use are safe on most people, and that is why you'll see them very readily available, especially for people with sensitive skin, the ones that are marketed to babies or children, and that is because they've been deemed really safe for use on everybody, whereas there's a little bit of backlash going into the chemical sunscreen filters because people don't know if they're safe, they don't know if they're harmful to human health, they don't know what they're doing to the marine wildlife. And here's what I have to say on that. When it comes to chemical filters, if you're concerned that they are damaging to human health, they're not. And that is something that I think a lot of people get mixed up, because there's so much controversy on whether or not you should be using chemical sunscreens because they could be toxic, they could be damaging to your health, they could cause breast cancer, things like that. But there is no evidence that has been done in human research that shows any damage to human health. These are things you have to keep in mind. We have had chemical sunscreens for decades, and there's no evidence suggesting that they're damaging to human health in a human trial. There is a little bit of evidence that they can mess with hormones in cells in a petri dish, but they've been around for so long and it's never caused anybody to have detrimental effects to their health. Now that being said, there is studies that prove that they have detrimental effects to marine wildlife, which is why I choose not to use them, because there are actually certain chemical filters that have been completely banned in states like Hawaii and Florida for their damaging effects on coral reefs and marine wildlife, mainly being oxybenzone, because that one is very, very dangerous to coral reefs. To put it into a little bit of perspective for you guys, 1 drop of oxybenzone can kill a coral reef the size of an Olympic swimming pool. So that is the reason that I personally choose not to use it. And if you are traveling to a state like Hawaii or Florida and you bring a chemical sunscreen that contains oxybenzone, they will actually confiscate it from you. So just keep that in mind as well. So all of that being said about chemical sunscreens, there are also a lot of downfalls to mineral sunscreens. The most apparent one being the white cast, because any sunscreen that contains a high level of zinc oxide, it's inevitable that it's going to have a pretty harsh white cast, and I have shown you guys some that make me look absolutely ghostly, and I look in the mirror and I go, I didn't know that I was having a meeting with Casper the Ghost today, but I guess I am. So there are definitely downfalls to mineral sunscreens as well, and you have to keep those in mind. So some people love what's called a hybrid sunscreen or a combination sunscreen that uses some combination of zinc oxide and or titanium dioxide and then uses those chemical filters as well. However, one thing that I will also say about that is avobenzone, which is your main protection from UVA in a chemical filter, has been shown to degrade very, very rapidly in the presence of titanium dioxide. So that is something that's one filter that we've shown in studies that it degrades very rapidly on its own, and there are some things that you can put in there to stabilize it. So avobenzone and oxybenzone work really, really well to stabilize each other, but if you're relying solely on a chemical sunscreen and that UVA filter is avobenzone, keep that in mind if you're going to layer a mineral sunscreen on top of it, that avobenzone will probably lose its effectiveness. Or if you're relying solely on a chemical sunscreen and you go over top of it with mineral makeup that contains titanium dioxide, that avobenzone probably won't protect you from UVA anymore. So with all of that being said, I did want to talk to you guys a little bit about the sunscreens that I personally do like. One that I used to be absolutely in love with, and I did stop using because it is US chemical. You guys know that I don't use US chemical sunscreens. However, that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be used. If you are only going to be willing to use a US chemical sunscreen, like I said, by all means, put sunscreen on your face, please. But one that I used to be absolutely in love with is the Supergoop Unseen sunscreen. This is an SPF of 40, and it's like a makeup primer. It feels incredible, and so I used to be absolutely obsessed with this one, but I did stop using it. This is just a little sample size that I got from a Sephora big giant sunscreen kit, so I'm gonna use this one up, but after that I will not be repurchasing it. However, if you guys haven't tried this and you are very fond of chemical sunscreens, I'd say test it out, because this is one that I used to be absolutely in love with. And then I did want to talk briefly about chemical sunscreens from Korea, or just Asian chemical sunscreens in general from different countries, Europe, Asia, anything like that, because they do have a very large range of filters that haven't been approved in the US. The way that the US looks at sunscreen is they look at sunscreens as an over-the-counter drug instead of cosmetic products like a lot of other countries look at them. So when we rate our sunscreens, they go through rigorous testing, and they don't really do that in other countries. So the FDA here has a ton of different testing and standards that go into making a sunscreen, whereas other filters are allowed in other countries that aren't allowed here. And that's the best way that I can really put that. I know it was probably a jumbled up mess that you guys didn't understand, but hopefully it made sense. But these guys have filters that work really, really well, but they're not approved here in the US. So the first two are the Dear Claire's Soft Airy UV Essence and the Purita Centella Green Level Unscented Sun. These two really, really were big game changers for me. I know that I did have a comment on my last sunscreen video saying that that some people really don't like them, and that's okay. We all have our own opinions, but these two I really did love. They both use the filters of Juvenile A+ for UVA and Juvenile T150 for UVB, so you are getting broad spectrum coverage. However, I'm not quite sure how they both got the highest PA rating, which is the UVA standard, because they only have one filter in there for UVA and only have one filter in there for UVB, whereas same with most mineral sunscreens in the US, we only have one filter for UVA and one filter for UVB, but these ones, when you look at Korean sunscreens, they normally have a ton of different filters, and at least 3. They would have the 2 that these have plus Tenosorb S for UVA and UVB. So I'm not sure exactly how these got their rating, but they are really good. Now, if you guys were a little bit wary of those SPF and PA ratings like I was, this is a really good option. So this is the Skin Food Sunflower No Sebum Sun Gel, and this has the 2 filters that those other ones had, plus it has Tenosorb, plus it has homosalate, which is a chemical filter that we actually do use here in the US, and then it has a few other filters that I cannot pronounce to save my life, but it has a ton of filters, and so whatever SPF rating that this was given, I truly do believe it. The only wariness that I have when it comes to these Korean chemical sunscreens or just any sunscreen that doesn't come from the US is they don't tell you the percentage of whatever filters that they put in these. However, when it comes to the percentage of filters, I don't think it really matters. What matters the most is how that product is formulated, and that is something that Dr. Dre here on YouTube will tell you as well. A lot of people ask, does the percentage of zinc oxide matter? Does the percentage of avobenzone matter? And the short answer is no, because you can have zinc oxide at 100% and still not be getting adequate sun protection because it's not formulated correctly. So the sunscreen label is really truly what you should be looking at to know how much protection from the sun you're actually getting. And then lastly, I do have 3 mineral sunscreens to talk about. The first one being the Dr. Dennis Gross Dark Spot Sun Defense Sunscreen. This one is really good if you guys haven't tried a mineral sunscreen without a white cast, because this one is a mineral sunscreen that has no white cast, which is so difficult to find, but this one is really nice. It uses zinc and titanium dioxide, which some mineral sunscreens only use zinc oxide, but this one does have both filters in it, and it works very beautifully. The only downside to this one is it does have quite a bit of fragrance, but I can get past that for how beautifully cosmetically elegant this is. And then last, I do have 2 tinted sunscreens to show you. The first being the Bare Republic Mineral Sunscreen Lotion Tinted Face. This is an SPF of 30, but it is the best sunscreen I have ever found from the drugstore, ever, for the face. Because if you guys have tried this one right here and you like it and you want something that is mineral without a white cast that feels like this is it. And that's really all I have to say about it. It is so nice. And I didn't think that something from the drugstore even existed that was that nice, but it does. And then the last one is the Misha Perfect Cover BB Cream. This one isn't really a sunscreen, but I did find out while I was doing research and while I was looking up a bunch of different ingredients list that most of the BB and CC creams, the keyword is most, not all of them, but most of them are actually mineral-based sun protection, which made my heart so happy because I honestly didn't switch over to using mineral sunscreens until about this year, honestly, probably around January. And so I had been using tinted sunscreens and a bunch of different BB creams and CC creams and tinted moisturizers and different things like that, foundations that have an SPF in them. And I wanted to know, like, how long have I been using something that I didn't know the ingredients of? And most of them that I've used in the past, if not all of them that I've used in the past, are completely mineral-based protection, which was something really interesting for me to see, honestly, because I thought that almost certainly a lot of them would have some chemical filters in there, but most of them are mineral protection. This one is mineral protection as well, using zinc and titanium dioxide in it, which is great. Last up, I did want to share a body sunscreen with you guys. This is the Copper Tone Pure and Simple Baby, and this is a mineral sunscreen that I have fallen in love with, honestly. If any of you have used the Biossance face sunscreen, this reminds me a lot of it, just a heck of a lot cheaper and in a giant bottle. But this is something that I use all over my body, and I can use it on my face as well. It's a really, really good one. One that I used to be absolutely in love with was, again, by Coppertone, and it was their Water Baby sunscreen. Unfortunately, that is completely a chemical sunscreen, and I was unaware of that, and so I have since stopped using that one and switched to this one, which is honestly very similar. They have a slightly different scent, I think probably because of the filters that they're using, but I really, really do like this one, and if you're looking for a good body sunscreen, that one's great. So that concludes this video. I hope that you guys learned a little something about the difference between chemical and mineral sunscreens. If you have anything else to say about this, go ahead and leave it down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up and share it with friends, because it really helps me out. And if you would like to watch my last video, you can go ahead and do that right over here. And if you would like to subscribe to my channel, which I urge you all to do, you can go ahead and click right over here, and I will see you all on my next one. Bye, guys.